Hey guys, it's Q&A time on May 1st, 2018. I'm a couple days late on the thread, but things have been pretty crazy, so I'm gonna get to it now. Better late than never, I suppose. General Q&A this week, it was open topic, Instagram and Facebook. So I'll go over to Instagram first and get those questions. Let's see. Good mix of questions again, so let's see what we have. All right. Question referring to leaky gut. Helping clients heal leaky gut, any advice, protocols, etc. Okay, so leaky guts gets thrown around a lot. I think we should probably maybe just define what it is, or at least the premise behind it. If you go to medical school or go to a GI doctor that's very by the book, they might not necessarily acknowledge this as a medical diagnosis. I'm not sure that it's actually even considered technically a medical diagnosis at this point. Probably will be, but one of the hard things about this is that the symptoms overlap. I mean, with a lot of GI issues, there's so many overlapping symptoms and a lot of vague diagnoses like, oh, you have IBS. Okay, well, there's a lot of things that come along with that. There's some other things that are a little bit more definitive. You have colitis or something. Okay, so we can kind of narrow things down a little bit more. But with something like leaky gut, there are a lot of overlapping symptoms. But basically what you're looking at is damage to intestinal lining, and toxins or, food particles or whatever you want to call them have leaked through that lining. So what causes that? All right, well, it can be caused by a lot of things. Pretty much anything that's going to irritate your gut can contribute to that issue, and the same goes for healing it. Healing leaky gut's a lot like healing a lot of other, not healing, managing, whatever you want to call it. It's not like managing other GI issues like IBS, for example. You really want to get rid of the irritants. You want to get rid of highly inflammatory foods. You need to control stress. You need to make sure that you don't have any food allergies. And you really need to pay attention to some other signs and symptoms. It's not so much like, oh, I ate X food, I have diarrhea. No, it might be things like skin flare-ups. You might have autoimmune issues. A lot of people that have psoriasis chronically or eczema can have leaky gut, for example. Not always, but I mean, a lot of the time I see a correlation between the two. So things like that can actually be caused by intestinal issues like leaky gut. So look at the symptoms as a whole. You really want to control all the symptoms. Like I said, minimize food irritants and, like I said, inflammatory foods. Even if food doesn't directly impact you when you eat it, if it is a highly inflammatory food like gluten, like dairy, you probably at least want to try eliminating it at first until you get everything under control, and then maybe reintroduce it slowly and see what happens one at a time. Get rid of anything that's obviously directly impacting your GI, hey, I eat this, I have issues. Probably ought to get rid of that. Any common irritants, like environmental toxins or things that you might be heavily ingesting that you can control, you might want to get rid of those, or you do want to get rid of those. So like I said, literally anything that you're going to do to that you would normally eliminate, you would want to go ahead and get rid of. Supplement wise, I mean, there's a lot of different supplements. I just posted one the other day, zinc carnosine. Great supplement for healing GI, just GI damage in general. Some of the research, I think the research that I posted talked about GERD and healing the GI lining from damage from acid reflux, but it can help with leaky gut. Absolutely, that is a great one to use. Anything that's going to control any of those GI symptoms that you're having, you would want to introduce those. Proper pH environment in your stomach. Maybe you're under acidify. You need to introduce some betaine HCl. Get the acidity, get the food digesting a little bit better and moving through you a little bit better. It could be digestive enzymes. It could be something simple like that. Maybe you have really poor intestinal flora. Okay, well, you can introduce a good probiotic product, probiotic-rich foods. It's hard for me to sit here and say this is exactly what you need, just because I don't know the situation. You got to hear the symptoms. You got to hear all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's like I said, you're asking kind of a specific question, or a question that's going to be very specific, person to person. Okay. Thoughts on long fast deep into a growth phase when carbs are high in order to maintain insulin sensitivity and whatnot. In order to make surplus last longer. Like a 24 to 48 hour fast. Heard of people going even longer. And using the fast as a reoccurring thing maybe once a month or every other month. Good question. So I've probably talked about this, maybe not this question specifically, but I absolutely use fast with people in surplus phases. Could be with someone that just needs a temporary reset. GI is really beat up. They're really pushing food. We need to do a fast. Maybe it's 24 hours just to get things reset, give their GI a little bit of break from the food. Could be something simple like that. I might even have people that they do a weekly fast. Maybe it's just 16 hours. Maybe it's 24 hours. Maybe they have a free meal on Saturday night at, 8 o'clock. I have them fast till 8 o'clock the next night and, have a meal and then go back to their business. The appetite's good throughout the week. GI is pretty calm at that point. Inflammation's down. They're feeling pretty good. Appetite's good. They're good to go. So, I mean, there's a variety of ways that I could use it. There's not really one set way, but to answer your question, yes, you can definitely use fast in the context that you mentioned. You mentioned insulin sensitivity as well. Yeah, for sure. I mean, could be a useful way to maintain sensitivity. The once a week thing, like I said, could be good. Might even have to throw in a week where I have someone go intermittent fasting for a whole week or 2 weeks or whatever, just to enhance sensitivity. I actually answered that question on my last Q&A about doing that. So go back and check that out. But yep, definitely answer to your question is yes. Yes, you can do them. Now, how long does it have to be? That's going to vary. You don't necessarily have to do a 48-hour fast to get the benefits. Maybe 24-hour fast more frequently, or some days of just intermittent fasting, like a 16-8 or something like that. You could use 48-hour fast in situations where it's kind of chronic problems, inflammation, GI distress, and you just need to get it fixed really quick. You could use it. It's probably not always going to be necessary to go quite that long, though. So, any protocols for spot reducing fat, specifically glutes, quads, hams on natural female competitors? So, okay, so female physiology is such that they hold fat in those places. It's mostly hormone related. Just there's female pattern fat, gain and reduction, and male pattern. So, guys hold it in their gut, and females typically hold it in their legs and their glutes and hamstrings. So that area. In a natural female, if you're not manipulating hormones a lot, there's only so much you can do. You can do things like hit stubborn fat receptors. So yohimbine HCl is a really popular one. That's one that's definitely could be used to hit the alpha receptors, typically located where the stubborn fat areas are. You could even try a topical yohimbine cream. it might help. It might mobilize a little more fat in those areas to be burned. Maybe. It's probably not going to be a miracle. Could help if you have the budget for it. It's not like you're not going to have a lot of success spot reducing without manipulating hormones a little bit more heavily. You can sometimes people have success with something like DEM where they can lower estrogen, not necessarily lower estrogen, but just change the ratio of estrogens a little bit, and that can help reducing cortisol potentially if the person needs it. But again, you're not manipulating the hormone environment a ton, and with females, progesterone and estrogen are dominant through different parts of the menstrual cycle. But as a whole, those are dominant hormones as compared to a male where testosterone, where they're an androgenic, more androgenic. So yeah, that's about all you're going to be able to do. Like I said, the yohimbine might help. Just keep getting leaner. Try to, I know that's frustrating, but one thing too is once you get the fat off, you need to be mindful of just not getting fat again. Easier said than done, but the less fat that you can gain back within still being healthy hormonally and metabolically, the better off you're going to be. But yeah, that's for a natural female. I mean, that's about the extent of it, without really starting to manipulate the hormones a little bit more. So there might be some other things that you could do in there, but again, we're not talking about anything chemical. So best ester to use for TRT, whatever your doctor prescribes you. There are some in the medical community now. There are some of the really long esters that can be used a lot less frequently. They're not super common. I mean, usually cypionate is what you see a lot. So cypionate and anthate, that's not really going to be a huge difference. Biggest thing is just maintaining good blood levels. You could really use any ester as long as you're maintaining good blood levels. You're not having too much, too many peaks and valleys. That's kind of one fault that I see in medically prescribed TRT a lot, is that they'll be using cypionate, for example. Like I said, that's pretty common. They do an injection every other week. That's what they're prescribed. Well, yeah, technically it's still present in the blood. Like it hasn't completely eliminated the ester yet, but it's not, your levels are going to be up and down pretty quickly. You're looking at probably at least twice a week, maybe even every other day, to maintain pretty good blood levels. And that's also going to maintain better estradiol levels too. You're not going to have as many swings in that, and your aromatization is going to be a lot less aggressive. So even if you're using a cypionate ester, look at probably twice a week, maybe every other day, if you're really prone to hormone swings and aromatization, estradiol side effects. And is keto good for someone above 20% body fat trying to get shredded? Cons of keto for someone above 20% body fat. Well, yeah, it could be used. Everything's really relative to the deficit. You could use keto for an entire prep if you wanted, or entire leaning phase if you wanted. There are some hormonal benefits to it. Maybe somebody just feels better doing it. But there are also benefits to having carbohydrates in the plan too, as far as the metabolic benefits, the leptin benefits. I probably, in most cases, I would say, just as a generalization, I'm probably not going to use keto straight through for someone that has a lot of body fat the whole time. Maybe right at the beginning, if their insulin sensitivity really sucks and I need to pull all the carbs out, but I don't want to just drop their calories to nothing, then I might use a ketogenic approach for a little while to resensitize and slowly add carbohydrates back in so they can tolerate them. But yeah, you could do it, and I kind of mentioned the cons of it, but it's more so related to calorie intake at the end of the day. So, that's obviously going to determine whether you lose weight or not if you can create the right metabolic environment. You could certainly do it the whole time if you adapt to fat. If you're someone that can get very fat adapted and you feel good doing it and you burn lipids as fuel really well, then yeah, I mean, you can definitely do it, but you're going to need to be that type of person. And I can't obviously tell you that here. So let's see. If you had a first-time competitor come to you for an off-season before they competed, what would you do to prepare them and their bodies, blood work, improve carb sensitivity, etc.? Oh man, so there's a lot of things that you can do. Some of the things that are going to be really important is I want a good metabolic environment, meaning I don't want them doing a bunch of cardio. I don't want them eating too few calories. I want those things to be as good as they can be relevant to that person. And I want them to have been good for a little while, not just, oh, I just got my calories up to 2,000, ready to go. Even though I was at 1,400 or 1,200 a month ago. I just built them up. Well, no, we need to build you up to metabolic capacity and hold you there for a little bit to make sure any adaptions are gone. So same with your cardio deal. And then blood work, yeah, I mean, definitely if we can, love to get labs done, see all the major sex hormones, thyroid, CBC, metabolic panel, all that stuff is all going to be good to see. Absolutely. I mean, if we can get that done. Insulin sensitivity, yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one too, because when your insulin sensitivity is usually best when you're leaner and your carbohydrates are lower, your calories are lower in general, typically. So we want the metabolic capacity to be high, and we want them to be eating a good amount of food, but we also want them to be insulin sensitive enough. So that's kind of a balance. Like, I don't just want to build someone's intake up super high just for the sake of it if it's just going to mean that they're fat and not insulin sensitive at all. That's not really beneficial to me. I want a balance between the two. An insulin sensitive body is going to respond to fuel sources a lot better, respond to glucose good, and be able to partition nutrients good. And just because I have a natural, or what they asked, what they said first time competitor, I'm assuming this is a female asking the question by the name, but just because I have a female competitor eating 2,400 calories at the end of the off season, if they're fat and and they're way out of shape, well, and not insulin sensitive, then it's not really hugely beneficial, because then they just have a really long ways to go in their prep, and it's probably pointless anyhow. So we need to have a balance of the two. I want to get them as high as I can with intake and as low as I can with the cardio, potentially, with still having good fasted glucose, still having good glucose levels after their meals, still processing carbohydrates well, still able to get a pump in the gym, all those signs of good insulin sensitivity. It doesn't have to be crazy. Like, I don't have to have them full-blown vascular crazy, but, I don't want them to be really insensitive when they start just for the sake of more calories. All right, Facebook, got a few more. Are there any changes to a protocol, supplements or super subs you'd put in place for an aging individual, training aside? So, yeah, I mean, I think that there comes a point too where you need to kind of weigh pros and cons of trying to get bigger and how much you want to progress. And it's not that you can't gain muscle when you're older, but there's a lot of context to that too. So how big are you? How long have you had that muscle? Are you really at your potential? If you're someone that starts training when you're 35, you're probably going to keep growing until you're 50 maybe or more. If you're someone that's been training since you were 15 and you've been growing up until you were 35 or 40, probably pretty much tapped out and just pushing more gear or whatever you're going to, whatever you're doing to get any bigger is probably not a very wise approach. Yeah, I mean, supplement wise, yeah, if you are tapped out, if you're not growing anymore, then just maintain good, healthy hormone levels. That muscle's not going to go anywhere, really. If you're doing a contest prep and you want to add just a little bit more in for that cosmetic effect, then they might do that. Okay. But a lot of the guys, that are 40, 45, 50, even, they're on hormone replacement. They do really well. They might need a little bit of growth hormone. Maybe they're even deficient and they're having that prescribed. Maybe not, but it's not, it's probably not necessary at that point for that aged permanent muscle is really not going to go anywhere if they're training wisely and eating properly. And then as far as like over-the-counter supplements, it's not going to be a lot different than someone that's younger, but the importance, I would say probably goes up. They need to be controlling all aspects of their blood work. So all their preventative supplements that they would normally take, and then looking at blood work a little bit more closely. Maybe they want to start doing things like calcium scores or getting some actual imaging done, like on their heart, or, things like that they might not necessarily do when they're a little bit younger. They're going to be more prone to other things like maybe high blood pressure. Things are just beat up a little bit more. They need a little bit more help in that regard. So yeah, controlling their lipids, controlling all their major organs, health, even things like, even some kind of unconventional things, like there's some things that we could maybe introduce just for cognition, just for mental function, preventing Alzheimer's, cancer, like reducing risk of cancer. So things like that. There's a couple supplements that I like to use myself and have some other people use that are not necessarily bodybuilding related. They're just health and longevity related, and they don't hurt anything to use. And they're not super expensive. So it would, for example, I'll give you an example of one. There's a broccoli extract. Jarrow Formulas makes it. Actually, I'll grab the product. I can show you what it looks like. So here you go. So something like that, the Brocomax. It's a sulforaphane generator is essentially what it is. Some of the research is showing it's actually helping with cancer prevention. So, something like that is vastly beneficial to people. Detoxifies liver enzymes. So yeah, guys, there's a whole host of things that you can use. Metformin, for example, not hammering the shit out of your mTOR pathways, activating AMPK more often, doing things like fasting more often. All those things that are preventative and healthy are going to be just even more important. It's going to get more situational. One thing I can say is that if you take, and this is kind of the example I use, if you take two people that are, I don't know, we'll do an age, 20, early 20s. They both, one's taken pretty decent care of themselves, one's kind of abused themselves. Well, one probably looks better than the other. Their health markers aren't vastly different. Maybe not vastly different. Now, take both of those people and make them 40. Huge difference between the two. Now we have specific things that we need to treat. It's not just general anymore. You can abuse yourself for a long time before it finally catches up. So, that's kind of my point, is that it's going to come down to specific conditions. But I would start looking into more health and longevity supplements and things along those lines. Examine.com is a great reference. Type in longevity. There's a bunch of stuff for anti-cancer, anti-diabetes, anti-Alzheimer's, so all that kind of stuff. Bye. You gotta get your sweet bow in the video.
What?
Gotta get your sweet outfit in the video.
Get out of here.
So yeah, if you have a specific follow-up questions about anything, let me know. Maybe I could do like a video or a post on preventative or longevity supplements. That would probably be a good one, since I haven't really seen that pop up. All right. next one. I will skip that one since it's already getting beaten to death. Last one. Okay. Indicators, signs, and symptoms you would make to tell a client to give for 5-HTP a try. Okay. So 5-HTP is helping with neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine. So, I mean, signs of low catecholamine function, depression, mood, anxiety, unstable moods. So stuff like that could be worth trying 5-HTP. I mean, look up anything that someone's going to be put on an SSRI for example. That's pretty much going to be the stuff that someone's going to need for 5-HTP. There are some exceptions to that. There are some instances where I would have someone use 5-HTP that doesn't normally have any of those things. Like, for example, deep in a prep on a ketogenic diet, while they're not getting much glucose, they're not producing as much serotonin, I might have them use 5-HTP for that reason, just to help along, and then we might get rid of it when they're done. But depression, anxiety, so stuff like that, I mean, might be worth trying. See if it helps, and if it doesn't help, then you probably don't need it. It might just be environmental related. It might not necessarily be a neurotransmitter deficiency. You could just be, I don't know, stressed or have a really bad environment around you. So with that said, dosing, start low. 100, maybe 50 to 100 milligrams can have an effect. And someone that's deficient, someone that actually needs serotonin, for example, 50 to 100 milligrams will have an effect. It won't really be sedative. I mean, you start going a little higher, 200, 300, 400, stuff like that. I mean, you're going to get some little bit of sedation probably. If you need it at night to calm you down and mellow you out and help with sleep, probably a little bit higher, 200-300 milligrams. And it could just be somebody that's prone to these symptoms and they just want to use it as needed. That's kind of what I do. I was prescribed SSRIs a long time ago, probably have some kind of serotonin imbalance, but I manage it pretty well, so I just really use it as needed. It's not an everyday thing. I don't really want to beat up my receptors, and I don't want to constantly be drilling myself for serotonin. So that's how I'll use it. If I need it during the day, 100 milligrams, pretty good to go. If I need it at night, 200 to 300 milligrams, and I'll get an effect from that because I haven't abused it. I mean, you could certainly go higher. You could go 500 short term. But I wouldn't suggest most people use it every day if they can avoid it. So I think that's it for this week, guys. And I will see you guys next week.